tuned in to 66.6 KILL Radio.
Fucking placement, I'll need you motherfuckers. I'ma get it on my own before I get on your production. Cause you fucking pieces of shit don't show no motherfucking love to me. I see right through your guys, you trying hard, but you can't run from me. Standing here, but you won't come inside. You see me and you feel the thoughts inside of your own fucking mind. You see me standing here, but you won't come inside. You see me and you feel the thoughts inside of your own fucking mind. Balance me between the beats, my life is slipping through the steam. Alive, but don't know what it means. My mind is not producing dreams. Productions means across the seas. I never get slow just on the street. I cannot help but to see I live the opposite of free. You standing here, but you won't come inside. You see me and you feel the thoughts inside of your own fucking mind. You see me standing here, bitch, I'ma let you die. You'll never fucking hear from me until the dust consume your life.
I'm not a nigga to play with. Move wrong, this shit can get ugly. I'm not a regular person, I'm stuffing about 100 bands right. Yeah, that I keep me a rocket.
Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you, so you can do not taxes. Intuit TurboTax, 100% expert guaranteed.
There are plenty of reasons you might need a new phone, but switching to a better wireless provider doesn't have to be one of them. Because the best phone deal offer is not having to buy a new phone. Keep your own phone and save when you switch to any Straight Talk wireless plan. Like our Silver Unlimited plan for just $45 a month with unlimited high-speed data and 5 gigs of hotspot. Plus nationwide 5G on America's most reliable 5G network. And no need for a new phone, at least until there is. Keep your own phone. Switch to a better wireless plan. Straight Talk Wireless. No contract, no compromise.
Jake from State Farm here to answer your what ifs.
Hi, what if a moose rams my car?
File a claim on the app. At State Farm, we're there for your what ifs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.
Citadel Credit Union has a checking account that's built for you. For a limited time, get $300 when you open a new checking account at citadelbanking.com/radio. Citadel Credit Union, a Forbes Best in State Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA.
What it been like? If I gotta keep it real, I'm just living.
Murdering that pussy soon as you go to the lights. Piping up your wife, and she said I'm one of a kind. Like she said that I make a tremble and I'm half your size. Yeah, she said that I make a tremble and I'm half your size. Yeah, murdering that pussy soon as you go to the lights. Yeah, piping up your wife, and she said I'm one of a kind. Yeah, she said that I'll make a tremble and I'm half your size. She said that I'll make a tremble and I'm half your size. I take her to dinner with the pages that you give her. Bitch, you're feeding me and her and I know dollar menu. You busting your ass while I'm busting my recital. If you come back home, I'll put a bullet in your spinal cord.
I hit that though, bro. Was this person a bot? Where are her scratch marks? Why the fuck is my mouse weird? No, without scratch marks, that's gonna be an impossible thing to find. Tunnel time because so many gens are progressed and I can't see scratch marks. She doesn't have scratch marks. Oh my. Wow.
If the cops pull me over, I got hit and leave. Face in my face, see through him like Neji. 64 pounds if a bitch try to press me. Water on my neck, looking like the hedgy. Bitch, I'm tryna fuck, pick me up when you're ready. Ice hockey puck, wrist flick, Wayne Gretzky. Diamond dance like Chuck Berry, fuck Elvis Presley. Still with that 98 Corolla, fucking Chevy, and I'm edgy, so I pass if a sucker tryna test me. Hey, gang pulling up like Viakoski. Nerds tryna copy, I can't fuck with no Kakashi. Team got me leaning like I'm on a Kawasaki, and this shit don't stop, eternal flames like Itachi. Thinking that it's sweet, bro, got sticks, no Pocky. Baby hella thick, like the eyebrows on Rock Lee. Quit playing, bitch, I ain't no Tamagotchi. Pull up to the crib and make a movie, Miyazaki. You ain't spitting shit, I'm tryna find out where the fuck to find you. Funny guy, leave you slipping off of me, my mate about you. Now you mad, but on the bonus steps, I keep the K about you. You a motherfucking nice, so you can see them kids around you. Always say the same shit, but baby, I can still stand you. I just posted at the spot thinking about who I'll fit this pound to. All my partners mixing logic, making sure this table sound. When I hit, she gon' run from that dick like a joke. Bitch, I'm lit, smoking on 2 blunts like I'm smoking. Shawty shit, her friend with my dick, she look like Napoleon. White bitch, yellow bitch, chocolate. And niggas don't know what the fuck going on. Agnostic, I'm a shark like the Pharaoh. I'm John's bitch. I fuck a queen and I carry on. A posh bitch, shawty neck was very long. Ostrich. If the cops pull me over, I got hit and leave. Fuck the blade, boy, I put a bitch on guillotine. Bitch, boy, you know my diamonds wet like a coral reef. These niggas ain't gon' catch me, I got a honey sneak.
なぜ私を裏切ったの？すみません、おざりしていたのです。考えの時間。
Come on to my spot, you'll see weed like Nori. Smoking weed up, wanting wood got me horny. Put it in her gut, sounding like some goy, man. I hit, then I quit. She doors, he's and shit, but I keep pushing like a train in Tokyo. Sucker, I take it. You don't really know me though. Funny how they talking shit, but hit a square, call him Dosey though. Digging out a bitch, I got her holding like it's OVO. Hey, bitch, I can't get big sauce like a dog. When I hit, little shawty gon' bust first hand solo. I be flexing in this bitch like boba. For sure though, bitch, I run a wave like a young Cole. Smoking whiskey in the clouds like I'm Lando. Bitch, I ride solo, I can't fuck with no rando. Still 10 toes in the soul, no sandals. Young Stacey Yoda, still your baby like Mando. Quarterback got him running like he Ice Shield. 21, we gon' get.
Nie lubimy cię, ale wiesz, to nie kłopot. Nie robimy scen.
Wake up to reality. Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world. The longer you live, the more you will realize that the only things that truly exist in this reality are merely pain, suffering, and futility. Listen, everywhere you look in this world, wherever there is light, there will always be shadows to be found as well. And hatred is born in order to protect love.
I've been in my mind, feeling.
I've been to the rock.
I'm a motherfucker selfish.
Henny in my cup, see I'm pouring up, right, up, down, she wanna go left, right. Hey, like an old bitch,
Side, I'm like, isn't that right? Throw that backside, give me back. Just a couple months back, dumb broke. Now they stand on my belt like it's one bowl. Flip a dollar for a stack full of hundos. You a dumb hoe. Busy hating on me, make you miss your bus home. I can run it over, I ain't taking just a.
like Harley Quinn, so nice, can't be bothered with. Yeah, babe, after resurrection,
like my name will, know I be chill. But if a nigga want smoke, then the bullets gon' feed him a meal. No, we gon' cover his gut. Shooting his eye, now he see the.
This is the sound of a person not doing their taxes. It's the sound of someone who let a TurboTax expert do their taxes for them and is now trying their hand at a Swedish recipe called Knallknut. Maybe one day they'll open a Knallknuter bakery. This is the sound of possibility. Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you so you can do not taxes. 100% expert guarantee. Full service products only. Video meeting, no expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees.
Priceline presents Go
There is granola inside your phone. There is garlic and coriander sauce in your phone. There are juicy clementines, bold and basket rotisserie chickens, and everything you love from ShopRite in your phone and Instacart. Download the Instacart app and get free delivery on your first order in as fast as 1 hour. ShopRite on Instacart. What you love when you need it. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Bananas are in your phone.
Уродливый?
Скорее наоборот.
Сомневаюсь. Сейчас бы не отказался.
Вон.
Деревич.
I bought a yours today. Painted all yellow like a bird.
Out here thugging my boy. Money changed to me. Shit, 65, you heard? Put your money in your shoes. I mean, I walk for the money. You know what I'm saying? Money on my watch. I mean, time is money. Money on my phone. I mean, I talk to the money. Money on my chain. I mean, the money hang with me. Money on my head. I mean, money on my mind.
Better call them, take the bus. Might run them in a minivan like Taliban was can. Every time I spit, they say I be pussy, yeah, Marshall's ice Randy. Like a shoe doodle on my foot, I'm looking dandy. Drop it into the time for your mother. Oh, you wanna see the best? Baby, nice to meet me. I just look up on my neck, keep it wet just like a Fiji. I just
I'm always fascinated by those mega mansions that cost millions upon millions of dollars, yet they look awful to live in. I've made a ton of content looking at bad mansions and bad expensive apartments and all of that. And today I learned about one that's pretty interesting. It's called the Invisible House. It's currently listed for $18 million, and you're basically paying to live in a shipping container that's surrounded by mirrors. It's planted right in the desert, and it is one single hallway that is sectioned off into like 3 or 4 rooms. And there's a giant pool that's in the middle, which kind of just acts more like a booby trap than anything because it takes up so much space. It'd be like a little moat you fall in and get frustrated with. There's also just a single TV there, but since everything's made out of mirrors, they couldn't mount it on anything, so it's a rolling TV, and it reminds me of something out of middle school classrooms when they roll around like the projector and stuff. It's just bad. Like, I think it's just a horrible design. Right now it's mainly been an Airbnb for celebrities that want to party there, which I guess makes sense because it's kind of just like this remote location in the desert that has a lot of like RGB light up, like lights all over the place, so it could be like a decent party spot. But to actually own it for $18 million seems like the biggest waste of money possible. You're better off owning anything else because it seems terrible to live in. Recently, one of my favorite YouTubers, Innis, actually did a tour of the property, and I just wanted to kind of show you what it looks like and why I think it's such a pile of shit. The world famous Invisible House. I was originally imagining like the Invisible Boatmobile.
Invisible House. Now, this section
Yeah, but why?
has a foundation that goes into the ground, but on the other side we have 2 concrete
Like, who's
facades.
living here? Lex Luthor? Trying
The
to
rest of the
avoid
structure
Superman?
Where we have the privacy to the entry.
I feel like the walkway kind of gives it.
Saves energy and like.
I don't think they were harassing. What?
On the table, there's a gray plastic bag.
Yeah.
And in it is my Three Musketeers bar.
Yeah.
Can you bring it to me?
Okay.
So I don't have to disturb King Alvin.
This guy already outed himself.
I went to New York last year and pretty much no one is obese there because you have to walk everywhere. As for the tailoring, sometimes tailoring is necessary if you're trying to get the best fit on a piece of clothing, or if your natural body shape while thin deviates from most people, but the fact that tailoring clothes just to get a basic fit was such a major topic of discussion in round 1 is pretty bad. Also, this guy Derek is really something else. Listen to his interview that Jubilee showed right at the start, almost as a way of calming down the fat acceptance hate mobs.
The reason that I chose to do this was mainly because it meant a lot to me to share the idea of like, as you transition away from being in a bigger body to potentially being in a skinnier body, that is not something that like makes you harder working or better at like achieving some sort of goal than the other person or another person that you may see in a plus size body.
What? Where did they find this guy? I can't believe he said that unironically. Derek is someone who used to be obese and is now thin, but it absolutely does mean you're harder working and more able to achieve a long-term goal than someone who is morbidly obese. In fact, if you're a guy who spent 2 years going from 300 pounds to 165 pounds, then I would say that not only are you more capable of achieving long-term goals than the average obese person, but you're also more capable of achieving long-term goals than the average person.
And going into it, I like promised myself I wasn't gonna tell any lies. I was gonna be very truthful and speak on every kind of experience that I had had leading up to today. I wanted to make sure that what I was saying was stuff that I lived through. I think putting on a character would be disrespectful to the other people that were here today.
I've watched a lot of these over the years, and none of the fakers had to give a speech about how they felt guilty for playing the game. Now, another thing that is very noticeable in this video is how much the people in this contest are trying to lump plus-size people in with people who faced actual discrimination for traits about themselves they cannot change. I think putting on a character would be disrespectful to the other people that were here today. Disrespectful? He's literally acting like pretending to be obese to win a few bucks is like putting on blackface. Or he's acting like being overweight puts you in a minority group. Newsflash, most people in America are overweight or obese, meaning that they're the majority group and thin and healthy people are in the minority. Since woke logic is always based on which group has more people, it should be considered offensive for you to claim that overweight people are oppressed. Alright, that concludes round 1, the most boring part of the game. Let's see who got voted off and get to round 2.
It's just so obvious. I didn't think this person knew how to fake something. a decisive strike? I thought there was still a pallet there. What's...
Oh wow. Speaking of aesthetics, because I'm very into that topic, these aren't very good smiles. For a good smile, you want more of a U shape, and you want to incorporate your eyes into the smile. These ones are very horizontal, and that's why they don't look good. Technically, the guy on the left, Bradley, has the best one. The good news is that you can retrain that so you don't look like crap when you take photos. I'm not the best at this, so I don't feel qualified to teach it, but you can watch this video here if you want to learn more. Anyway, I thought that was an important tangent because in this era, knowing how to take good photos will get you ahead. Let's hear some woke stuff.
As a woman in a plus size theater community, it's like I always got the funny roles or the really unattractive roles. And I'm like, I'm big, that doesn't mean I'm hilarious. Like,
girl, we could talk about this forever.
Yeah, so that's super powerful because performing and becoming into yourself, you either have to be overly confident and fake it till you make it, or it will tear you down.
Well, as a blah blah blah, immediately when I hear someone say the words as a blank, my eyes roll over because every time a person does that, they're doing it not as a qualifier of their opinion, but instead they're listing off how you should see them as oppressed and therefore want you to agree with them, or you're a bad person who is invalidating their experience. It's never as an engineer or as a neuroscientist or anything that would better qualify the opinion they're giving. Well, personally, as someone who is successful in the entertainment business, I have to say that the reason this plus-size person is being typecast into the same role is because that's how people make money in entertainment. Did you ever notice that most of the successful actors play the same characters over and over? Very few of them have range like Johnny Depp or Heath Ledger and can play people who are entirely different from themselves. Also, if she doesn't like her typecast, then she can lose weight. Welcome to Hollywood. Actors have to change their body shape to get jobs all the time.
How do we all identify? Do we identify, like, what do we use to label ourselves, if you have one?
P-H-A-T. Thank you.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I have a weird feeling about that one for some reason.
That was a pretty millennial style reference for someone who looks like a Zoomer. I haven't heard PHAT in like 10 years. However, it doesn't matter how you identify yourself here because the reason you said as a plus-size woman is to note your oppression points, and the reason you get points for that is because you perceive that other people think of you negatively because you're obese. Changing the language is not going to change how people perceive you, so anything said during this segment is nonsense.
I'll say fat, and then people will be like, oh my God, fat! And then I'll be like, it's not inherently a bad word, it's an adjective.
It's also a noun. The noun form is the one that's not inherently bad. The adjective form usually comes with a negative connotation. That's why you guys care, and saying that you don't doesn't make it so.
Yeah, that's the thing. No, but it is kind of taboo because I was like, oh yeah, I'm fat. Don't say that, you're beautiful. I am gorgeous, but I am fat.
I didn't say I was ugly.
It's, oh my God,
Yeah,
bro.
sorry, I misspoke.
I was
People
like,
treat it like it's
right,
taboo, and
right.
that's
So
the
it's
issue.
it's too true.
But that's not true, and the reason it's not attractive is because it's unhealthy. I think if you get into the anatomy and physiology of things, you'll find that a lot of stuff that we perceive as unattractive are also unhealthy, like a forward-leaning head. That will cause things like carpal tunnel syndrome or TMJ. Bad breath can be a sign of poor dental health or a candida overgrowth. Mouth breathing likely causes you to get sick more because your nose filters air whereas your mouth doesn't. We are also finding out that mouth breathing may cause more cavities, crooked teeth, and poor nasal pathway development. All of these are things that people perceive as physically unattractive. Physical attractiveness, especially when it comes to obesity, is very related to health. But really, the most unhealthy thing that these people are doing is saying that they are fine the way they are or that they are all these great things without having done any actual work.
It's such an unhealthy message to send to people. We're all human, none of us are perfect. It's teaching people that you shouldn't need to strive to improve yourself. You shouldn't need to struggle. And when you come across challenges or adversity, the rest of the world just needs to accept that you're amazing the way you are. Imagine if people took that to heart and tried to take that lesson out into the world and apply it to their lives. It would be disastrous for them. They would just get hit with like failure after failure.
Yes, it's not a coincidence that when I research the people in my videos with these ideas, that pretty much none of them are successful. That's why I call these ideas psychological poison.
Being fat or plus size does not mean that we're not active, that we're not nice people, that we're not worthy. It really sucks when people treat you differently because you're a size 18 rather than a size 2 or 4.
Well, I don't think that anyone would say that being obese means you're unkind or you're unworthy, but I do think that these people, and this person in particular, doesn't think she's worthy or worthwhile, because if she did, then she wouldn't shovel a ton of food down her throat to the extent that it harms her health and limits her relationship options. And stop the gaslighting. Yes, obesity is limiting your options. You can say you're kind and have a good personality, that's great, but it's not the only thing that matters, and that occurs in other fields as well. When you buy products, you don't just buy for the utility of the product or the personality of the product. You also buy products based on how they look. You want something that has useful functions that also looks good. The example I like to use a lot is with these products here. On the left, we have the OSSC, and on the right, we have the RetroTink 5X. These products essentially do the exact same thing. They allow you to upscale a modified retro console into HD. The problem is that the OSSC looks like a blocky piece of crap, whereas the RetroTink 5X has a very nice, simple, encapsulated design with ports that don't create a huge mess of wires when everything is plugged in. The OSSC has the utility, but it doesn't look good, and therefore it is an inferior product, and I imagine that it sells less units. Another example I like to use is this cake that I make for parties. Not only do people say it visually looks good, but it's also a great tasting cake. It has function and a desirable appearance. But as much as these big companies lie to you by saying appearance doesn't matter, you'd be shocked at the millions upon millions of dollars they spend making sure their products look good. You wouldn't use products like YouTube if they look like crap. This is why I say things like how you smile matters. That's why eating right matters. That's why going to the gym matters. A good product has to have utility, and it has to be aesthetically appealing. Anyway, that's the end of round 2, and believe it or not, they continue to say ridiculous stuff and undermine people who actually try hard to achieve their goals in round 3 as well.
I think the odd one out is probably somebody who lived as a fat person but lost the weight. But usually a lot of the time people that do grow up fat or go through weight loss journey, they end up being more fat phobic. That's not in all cases. It's not in all cases, but it does happen a lot.
Yeah, it's because they went through the struggle, achieved the outcome they wanted, and you know what they found out? They probably found out that simply putting your nose to the grindstone and doing the work is actually much, much easier than suffering the consequences that you put yourself through by being overweight. They found out that it's not as impossible as the complainers make it seem. Those people are just making excuses. And you know what I've noticed throughout this whole episode, and we're only halfway through, so there's still a lot more of this to come. Literally no one has said anything positive about being fat. It's all negative. I can't buy the clothes I want. I can't shop where I want to shop. I have to get all my clothes tailored. I get cast in roles that I don't want. People don't find me attractive. People assume negative things about me. Now, I didn't show this, but the faker Derek said that he had to quit the math team when he was a kid because he was too overweight to fit into the team vest and he was embarrassed. Compare that to this Jubilee video of girls who are rating their strengths where they only have positive things to say about being thin and in shape.
I feel like everyone should lift. It's such a great foundation.
You're gonna feel good about yourself. You're gonna meet great people at the gym, and also it's nice to see what your body's capable of doing.
Yeah, weightlifting rocks.
So tell me, if you only attribute negative things to your condition, then how are you fat with a PH? How is this desirable? From what you described, being obese sounds horrible, and you haven't even gotten to the real fun part of obesity, which starts in your 30s and 40s when you have to take 100 different medications because you have joint pain, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. All of this is way more work and way more suffering than just losing the weight. But the problem is that these people don't want to go out of their comfort zone and are too lazy to learn how to change their behaviors. But don't take my word for it.
Turning it on that, like I really do think that in my personal experience, people that go from being in a bigger body into like becoming skinny feel some sort of resentment, especially because I think they tie achievement to what they've done for some reason. Like there's this very big principle of like, look at what I've done, and they push this like American dream-esque mentality of like genuinely like I worked hard and I did this. Like, well, not everybody wants to do that.
and
Not
that's
everybody
fine.
wants.
I like how he just admitted that they are lazy, and basically everyone agreed. What's funny is what is said next by this person here.
That's fine. If you want to lose weight, do that, but you don't need to like project that onto everyone else.
The best part of this is that she says that people are projecting, and then 2 minutes later, she said that she always wanted to be thin.
I think it's difficult too because you know, I grew up fat. I've been fat my entire life, and I've always envied in a way I've always wondered what it would be like to live in a thin body and how people treat you differently. Like I've dreamt about it.
I love how these people accidentally tell on themselves if you can get them to speak long enough. Joe Rogan says that it's one of the benefits of his podcast, and it's probably why certain people won't come on. It's hard to tell a lie for 3 hours straight. Good liars will say as little as possible. And this person, V, isn't the only one who got caught. Remember how this girl, Marcel, said that obese people are active?
Being fat or plus size does not mean that we're not active.
Well, here's her saying that she gained a lot of weight because she wasn't active.
So I moved to the US when I was 16, and I started gaining weight. You know, the life here is different. I wasn't as active, I wasn't doing sports anymore, and then I was on birth control. So for me, it was hormonal imbalance that made me gain a lot of weight.
Gee, imagine that. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Finally, someone admitting that the sky is blue and not trying to say it's pink. She still had to blame birth control, though. Listen, birth control has its issues, and it might cause you to gain like 10 to 20 pounds, but it's not causing you to gain like 100 pounds. That's an eating disorder doing that. But you see, these people all know the answer. They know the answer is to eat less and move more. She said she gained weight because she wasn't doing that. The sad thing is that because this is an addiction and because a ton of people in media are lying to them and saying that they are fine, they are really only going to make a change if something extremely bad happens to them.
I'm a bulimia survivor. I was bulimic for about 8 years, and I also played volleyball and it was in theater and stuff like that. And the only reason I stopped throwing up and binging and purging is because I was losing my voice, and I love to sing, and I got nodes.
Oh no, that's the worst. Oh my God.
I went from mezzo soprano to mezzo alto, but yeah, like if it didn't affect my voice, I don't know if I would have stopped.
Yep, that's how it is. This person had an eating disorder, and almost destroying her voice is what caused her to change. Well, she still has an eating disorder, but you get the point. Addicts have to suffer negative consequences before they'll change, and the worst thing people could do to an addict is to prevent them from experiencing a negative consequence of their behavior. Nothing positive will convince them. They have to experience negativity, and that point is communicated here.
Honestly, dating, I've met many guys who were like, I used to be big, so I understand that being smaller is more desirable, and it's just like this conversation just rubs me the wrong way because I've been met with so many people who think like that, and like the worst person I dated was very fatphobic, and they used to be bigger and they lost weight, and they were like shaming me about my body, being like, you know, we'd have better sex if you were smaller and all that shit. Like, oh my God.
See, she doesn't care about the positives, and based on what these people say is fat phobia, she describes what I personally think was probably more so concern as abuse. Her ex was right though. I don't know why no one talks about this, but being more in shape makes sex way more fun. Not only that, but from the perspective of her past relationship, it is incredibly hard to move someone around who weighs that much, and no one wants to be with someone who is instantly out of breath the second they start moving. Just keep adding this stuff to the list of all the things that suck more than actually making an effort to lose weight. So that's pretty much everything interesting that happens during the game. If you've watched this series before, then you might have realized that I already spoiled the ending in the intro clip by showing them in a red light, which means the faker won. Once they realize this, all hell breaks loose and the apologizing begins.
On the count of 3, everyone can take off their blindfolds. 1, 2.
I knew it. I knew it. I told a heartfelt story about dating someone with fat phobia. You guys voted me.
Okay, can we talk about 1,000,001 reasons why it was Derek?
Okay, the only one that got me was just with Peter. Like, I really could relate with that. So I obviously know that
No.
you really were through that.
That's right. I think that was true.
That, no, it wasn't true. That's what I'm saying.
That's an important thing. Nothing, there is not a single,
What? Why is he like apologetic? The point of the game is to lie and pretend that you're something you're not. Did the fake vegan have to apologize in the vegan episode? No. Honestly, if they're going to get all offended, then they shouldn't have played the game. They are doing the exact thing that is wrong with Holly. If they're did the fake is he like
you really were through that.
That's right. I think that was true.
No, it was true. That's what I'm saying.
That's an important thing. Nothing, there is not a single,
What? Why is he like apologetic? The point of the game is to lie and pretend that you're something you're not. Did the fake vegan have to apologize in the vegan episode? No. Honestly, if they're going to get all offended, then they shouldn't have played the game. They are doing the exact thing that is wrong with Hollywood. We, the viewers, just want to watch people play a game. Meanwhile, the producers are trying to introduce some dumb political message that we don't care about at the expense of the game.
I'm sorry to anybody that shared something personal and then like because of this feels like they were lied to or like I came into the game with the idea of just having fun and I promised myself like I'm not gonna lie a single time that when I speak. It's like I didn't want to like come in here and build a character.
The point of the game is literally to lie. This is what they signed up for.
I swear to God, if anyone's lying, oh my God, I'm so pissed.
After this, they show Derek, the thin guy, going on some really dumb tirade.
I hope that in watching this video, you can learn that the horrible stereotypes we have of plus-size people, that they're lazy or sluggish or they don't eat right or they're not healthy.
Not lazy? Bro, you called them lazy multiple times during the game. Do you not remember that?
Well, I was gonna throw up air quotes to help find it. Because they like put in the work, that part being air quotes, and like became into a skinnier body. All of a sudden, there's this idea like you aren't working as hard. But again, not everybody wants to work that hard.
Exactly.
Also, you can't be morbidly obese and have healthy eating patterns because overeating is disordered eating and therefore unhealthy. Even if they eat the most organic Whole Foods farmers market stuff you can find.
There are people that are plus size that are faster than you. There are people that are plus size that are in better conditions than the average human being.
Challenge accepted. They all want to say they're physically fit and healthy, and by stating things that are obvious, I'm stereotyping and acting bigoted. Okay, what's the prize money in Odd One Out? $1,000? Fine. I challenge any of the obese people in this game, as long as they are still obese, to a 100-meter dash, and if they can beat me, I will give them $1,000. So anyone but Derek can claim the prize. I'm not even that fast, so you actually have a chance to win. And I'm completely serious. If you were in the video, then contact my agent with the email on my About page on my YouTube channel, and we'll set this up, film it, and if you win, you get the money. Let's smash those oppressive stereotypes. Anyway, just for some positivity, let's end this with someone who has a take that is not insane.
I couldn't tell like how I had an eating disorder when I was younger and how I overcame that. And then I slowly started drifting back to it, and I'm trying to lose weight now in a more healthy manner. So I wish I could have told that story to the group.
Yes, thank you for calling it disordered eating because that's what it is. And thank you for continuing to make an effort to change instead of quitting and gaslighting by saying you're healthy like the fat acceptance people do. All the people who are gaslighting and not referring to this as a disorder are really doing a disservice to the people whose lives are being ruined by the inability to control their behavior. Like I said earlier, the consequences of being obese are much worse than the inconvenience of losing weight. If you actually put in the work to exercise, eat less, and do some YouTube research to make sure you're using the most effective techniques, then you'll see that it's really not as hard as your fantasy makes it out to be. Now, every time I talk about obesity, I'll usually throw in a little weight loss tip. Here's one that I learned from weightlifting. Sleep is actually incredibly important for fat loss. It's been researched. Check out this Jeff Nippard video here. You want to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night if you want optimal fat loss. Also, just from a practical standpoint, the more stressed you are from not sleeping, the more likely you are to overeat or eat convenience foods instead of cooking your own meals. Outside of that, as I always say, weight loss is about psychology, not so much about diet and exercise. You need to put yourself in the correct mental space to motivate yourself to eat properly and exercise properly. You aren't going to do that if you're too stressed. One thing I like to do to reduce stress is to reduce the number of problems that I have. If you have 50 problems, life sucks, but it sucks less if you reduce it to 49 problems. And instead of sitting around and letting stuff overcome you, how about you write out a list of problems that you currently have the ability to solve and start knocking them out? It can be an easy one, like maybe you have $500 of credit card debt. Work a couple of extra shifts and knock it out. Or maybe it's something more mid to long term, like $10,000 of debt that you work to solve over a while. Whatever the actual thing is, I'm sure you can list out some solvable problems and you can start making your life suck less by fixing them and crossing them off the list. And what you'll find is that after you've been doing that for a while, is that the bigger problems that you thought you couldn't solve actually become more manageable. Maybe you have trouble losing 100 pounds because there are 5 things in your life that are making that goal more stressful to achieve. Knock those out first and then turn your focus towards losing weight. The psychological game is how you achieve this goal, and the reason people are failing is because they're focusing their energy in the wrong direction. You can pretty easily determine if that's you by asking yourself, did this thing get me the result I wanted? If the answer is no, then try a different strategy. Anyway, thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm a little bit late to talk about this, but
nice scuba suit. You need a ride, darling?
In Seattle, Police Chief Carmen Best says her department's recruitment ads are designed to attract more women to the force.
We want to show more women. We want to show women in diverse positions. It's not just that we need more women, but we need a lot more women of color. I think that's where our police departments could potentially transform.
Yes, and how is that exactly going to solve the problem? That has nothing to do with the problem whatsoever. The actual problem with police is police incompetence and overstepping authority. Both genders can be incompetent, and both genders can overstep authority. Police need to train more so that accidents happen less frequently, and police need to stop breaking the law with things like drunk driving checkpoints, which violate the Fourth Amendment. What happened to all that? That's originally what reforming the police was about, but it seems that just disappeared in favor of a narrative used to destabilize the country. The video clips I just showed are partially in response to the George Floyd arrest, which at worst was a case of police incompetence. It certainly wasn't a case of overt racism like the mainstream media said it was so they could incite riots. The leaked footage exonerated the cops of racism who were highly accommodating to Floyd, particularly when he initially said he couldn't breathe. They also worked to de-escalate the situation despite the fact that Floyd continuously refused to follow police direction. The only thing they did wrong was put a knee on his neck for 8 minutes without periodically checking to make sure he was still alive, which, like I said, would be an example of police incompetence, not racism. With that in mind, how would implementing female officers in this situation have helped? I don't think it would have helped at all. In fact, I think it would have made the situation worse. I'll get to why, but first, let me tell you about my newest sponsor, Mensters. Mensters is a clothing line that is dedicated to free speech, masculinity, and a positive state of being. Their t-shirts, sweatshirts, caps, and phone cases all have amazing art designed to showcase the power of freedom and the power of carrying the weight of responsibility. Check out this video's sponsor, Mensters, by clicking on the first link in the description. Alright, so according to the video, the ideal female to protect us is this friendly female Seattle police officer. They must have shot this footage before the riots. Take a look at this image here. We can see that our friendly officer is teamed up with a male officer. Something I noticed is that this woman is very petite and well over a foot shorter than the man she is standing next to. What is she, 5'1" or 5'3"? What is she going to do to George Floyd, who is 6'4"? Remember, Floyd was very resistant to arrest and behind the wheel of a car under the influence of several drugs. There is no way her and 2 or 3 other female cops of her stature would ever be able to safely restrain George Floyd for an arrest if he resisted. If they pepper sprayed him, he could still resist. If they used batons, he probably still would have won. I suppose they could have tased him, assuming that works considering how many drugs he was on. But the problem with that is that Floyd has a heart condition, and tasing him could have killed him. That would have put you right back at square one. Let's say he tries to get away. What do? You aren't strong enough to physically restrain him, you can't pepper spray him, tasing doesn't work, and he is about to drive a car under the influence of powerful opiates. Are you just going to let him get away? A man who is chemically impaired and could accidentally hit someone on the way home? A man who has a history of violence against women? Maybe you could record his license plate number so the male cops can arrest him later, after he gets away, which would now cost more police resources and open up the possibility that he commits more crimes or flees the state before they can arrest him. The only thing that would equalize a female with a man of George Floyd's size is a gun. They would have to shoot him to stop him, and now you have just used more force than would have been used if men were on the scene. Most violent criminals are male. Imagine the amount of injuries police officers would sustain from criminals who resist arrest if most officers were female. Being a police officer is a dangerous job. How many more officers would die on the job if you had tons of female officers taking on male criminals who are way stronger than they are? If it's okay to put female police officers against male criminals, then why don't we have women fight against men in boxing or the UFC? They are just as capable, right? Or should we look at reality? Men are stronger than women, but don't take it from me, take it from a female officer from Israel.
I honestly do believe that maybe like men are built stronger and like that's fine and like
if I have to do an arrest, it's not always easy, you know.
A lot of times the person's bigger than me or even stronger than me and they're trying to get away. So yeah, that's definitely happened.
I don't see why this completely obvious fact of nature has to be pointed out time and time again. The original documentary clip I showed you only has females in perfect situations. They have the happy female Seattle cop saying hi to people on the street where there is absolutely no danger, or they have this.
Hi. Do you know I'm stopping you? You can calm down. I see you're shaking. Just relax. Relax, it's all good.
You can see in that traffic stop that that man that was stopped by Alice had someone who was nurturing.
What a delightful situation. A happy traffic stop where the person is scared of the police officer. See how well Officer Alice does? How about this? What would happen if Alice runs the car's plates and finds out that he is in a stolen car? What if he also has a warrant for murder and he isn't going quietly? How are you going to stop him without using excessive force and keep people safe when you are weaker than him? How are you going to keep yourself safe in that situation? Even when it comes to police rescues like this, there's an interesting video. Video out there that's been going around recently where a female officer rescues a 66-year-old man from being hit by a train because his wheelchair was stuck on the tracks.
Go on, can you get up? Get up.
Before I talk about this, I do want to take a second to point out the extreme bravery of this officer. Jumping onto train tracks just seconds before the train was about to hit was incredible, especially considering that she could have been hit by the train too. However, we do have to look at the facts of the situation because we want the best possible results for society at large, particularly when you're trying to save somebody. You don't just want to save them, you want to save them the right way with the least amount of injury. So when I look at the reality of this train situation, I see that even though this officer was very brave, she fumbled the man before he was completely off the tracks, and he got his left leg amputated by the train. If he still had feeling in his legs, that must have been quite painful. Not to mention that losing a leg could cause you to bleed out and die. So you have to ask, would that have happened if someone stronger pulled him off the track? Maybe he could have been spared that injury. I know it's mean to the rescuer. I know it's something certain people might not want to hear, but you have to ask, would you rather not be offended, or would you rather have two legs? Ultimately, when talking about the demographics, it comes down to who is the most qualified for the job. If you are being robbed at gunpoint and 5'1" happy female Seattle police officer comes to save you, do you feel safe? If you were trapped in a burning building and a 5'3", 115-pound firewoman comes to pull you out, would she even be able to do that? After carrying you out of the building, would she then have the stamina to save anyone else that's still in the building? Ask yourself, do you want people to not be offended, or do you want people to be alive? When it comes to any job, you need to base your selection process on merit. Men are demonstrably far stronger than women are. Men are the most qualified for these jobs, and when men don't do these jobs, it puts everyone else in danger, including the female workers. Let's look back to the Marine study on men and women that I referenced in the video I did about women in the military. It says here that women are twice as likely to be injured. Twice as likely to be injured than their male counterparts. That is a huge liability. It gets worse than that. Here's what happens to women when they try to operate at the physical fitness level of a man. The average infertility rate of women in the US is 12%. This survey of military women says that their rate of infertility is almost triple of the rate of the average woman. Women should not be doing these jobs in place of men. It's a danger to them and everyone else. But don't take my word for it. Take it from a female military officer.
Not everybody believes this latest step towards equal rights is a good idea, including a female Marine officer who has been on the front lines. Joining me now is Captain Katie Petronio. So there was this push in the last couple of years to let women do more, to technically be on the so-called front lines. Do you agree with it?
My specific concern is opening up infantry for females.
Why?
It's definitely not a cost. The cost definitely outweighs the benefits. It's not going to help the individual, and it's not going to help the institution. We're a warfighting institution, and combat readiness needs to be at the front and foremost when we make decisions like this. And I don't think that this change is going to benefit anybody. The other question then I present is longevity. We're talking about opening up opportunities for females, but my concern that I point out in the article is that there's these gender-specific medical concerns that are going to come with opening these fields that I'm not so sure we've really thought about. And on the backside of that, there's going to be a cost associated with these medical conditions. And are we ready to pay the price for that?
You went through some of the rigorous training that the men did, and what happened to you?
I've faced a lot of weight loss, muscle atrophy. I also developed polycystic ovarian syndrome, which for me resulted in infertility. It's a type of combat environment these days that's very strenuous, and I was only doing a portion of what our infantry brothers do.
If you want a cool job in law enforcement, then be a detective. You can do all that fun CSI stuff. Or you can work undercover in cases where they need women. There are plenty of ways to be useful in those fields. But as for the front lines, we need to pick the most appropriate candidates, otherwise people will die or get severely injured when they shouldn't have. Even in the case of the criminals, the best way to safely handle a criminal is to know how to grapple and be physically stronger than they are. So why is this all being done? Well, it has nothing to do with equality like the mainstream.
What? How low?
media and everyone else says it does. I thought I might bring this up because recently it's become popular due to a Call of Duty trailer. This is Yuri Bezmenov, a former KGB informant. In the 1980s, he did a speech on how communism takes over countries. Here is a part of that speech.
The highest art of warfare is not to fight at all, but to subvert anything of value in the country of your enemy, until such time that the perception of reality of your enemy is screwed up to such an extent that he does not perceive you as an enemy, and that your system, your civilization, and your ambitions look to your enemy as an alternative, if not desirable, then at least feasible. Better red than dead. That's the ultimate purpose, the final stage of subversion, after which you can simply take your enemy without a single shot being fired, if the subversion is successful. This is basically what subversion is.
In this speech, Yuri states that subversion dates back to Sun Tzu from about 2,500 years ago. Subversion is a method of nonviolence. I have always said that if you want to get something done outside of defending yourself against a physical attack, then nonviolence is the most effective method, whether that thing is good or it's evil. If you are evil and want to win a war, don't attack your enemy. Instead, convince them to attack themselves. Subversion artists do this by implanting themselves anywhere information is exchanged: media, education, the workplace, etc. And they use these outlets to promote messages that weaken society under the disguise that they are being helpful. So
Okay.
So why are they promoting female police despite the fact that women are significantly weaker than men? It's because who will stop all the men rioting in Seattle, Portland, and Minneapolis if all of the police are women? BLM and Antifa will be able to burn down whatever cities they like. The master plan is to spend years taking away the gun rights of law-abiding citizens, increase their distrust of the police, then spread a bunch of lies and false information to incite riots that no one can stop because everyone's rights are gone and there are no police. During his speech, Yuri talks about several different places where that has worked. However, inciting riots is not enough. You first have to spend about 2 decades demoralizing the society. How do you do that? You take over the education system and teach people things that are useless. Don't teach people sciences or trades which actually make money. Have them instead study 2 years of a foreign language they will never remember. Make them take acting classes, art classes, or music. You know, careers where most people are broke. Then, you take all of these unsuccessful people who are demoralized because you haven't taught them any useful skills, and you tell them that the reason they aren't successful is because society is out to get them. Tell them that no matter what they do, because of the class that they were born into, they will never be successful. Great. Now you have a whole generation filled with people who are unsuccessful, depressed, and possibly unemployed or unemployable, who hate society and are willing to burn everything to the ground. How do you fight against this? You realize that the weapon of the subversion artists are the discontent losers. The fewer depressed people they have, the more people have stable friend and family groups, and the more people have good jobs, the less subversion works. The way you fight subversion is to become successful and help other people become successful so there aren't any losers. Being successful is not a mystery. It takes 3 things. First, work really hard. Second, learn new, useful, and marketable skills. Do not waste tons of time learning skills that don't lead to money. Not just that, but only focus highly on the most useful parts of that skill. Take YouTube for example. There are tons of YouTubers out there who can do all the amazing edits. They have cool text and glitch effects go across the screen, they have custom 30-second intros and all kinds of flair in the video, but they have no followers. They spent so much time learning how to create effects that largely no one cares about that they didn't have any time to spend learning the skills of content creation that actually matter. In fact, some of those skills are detrimental. If I see a long channel intro on a video, no matter how cool it looks, I'll just skip it or click off the video and watch someone else. You'll bleed viewers by overdoing something like that. So only spend time focusing on the stuff that matters. Third, subject yourself to criticism. You cannot figure all this stuff out by yourself. You need input of other people, particularly the ones who are more skilled than you. Criticism is almost never said gently. You are probably going to be offended by it, but you can't ignore it or you will fail. If you can stick to these three principles, work hard, learn new skills, and take criticism, and you are able to adapt to your environment, then you will be successful in whatever you do. If you want to stop authoritarianism, then you need to take control of your own life and build it into something great. Once you have done that, take it a step further and help other people achieve great things too. Be charitable. If we are all successful and we are all helping each other out, then there is nothing these tyrants can do to break society down, because no one will want to follow them. But, with that said, I think that's enough for this video. So if you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, comment and share. If you would like to support this channel, then you can do so at PayPal, Patreon, or Subscribestar. You can find all of those links in the description. Last, if you haven't checked out my Facebook, Twitter, or Gab, you can also find those in the description.
I made the mistake of looking at the MGTOW tag on Tumblr, which is like men going their own way. What a person has done with their bodies in the past should have no impact on who they are.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do there.
As long as they were safe, as long as they're currently healthy, it really doesn't make a difference. If you're worried about a woman's sexual past, I think that says more about your insecurities than it does anything about her. Seriously. If a woman's with you now, she's with you now. That's her decision. It doesn't matter what's happening next. I see nothing wrong with single mothers or abortion.
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about child abuse and how it affects your thinking process. I thought that this video from Rachel Oates about MGTOW would be the perfect medium for that. Rachel is not a big fan of MGTOW, and to prove that MGTOW are awful, she's going to use the biggest strawman example that she can find, which really didn't backfire at all. Now, what is immediately noticeable in this video is how often Rachel contradicts herself. She claims that she is all about science, but then uses a bunch of anti-science philosophies and shows her complete ignorance on nearly every subject that she talks about in the video. Even with this first clip of her, the whole premise of her video is that MGTOW are violent women haters. So that means she's not violent, right? If that was true, then why is she pro-abortion? Abortion is a procedure where you take a vacuum and tear apart an unborn child limb from limb until it dies. Pro-choice or not, that's pretty violent. She's also perfectly okay with single motherhood. Look at the communities who have high rates of single motherhood. Their crime rates are through the roof. Single motherhood destroys communities and creates violent people. These kinds of contradictions are all over this video, and I'll get to them, but first, I think it's important to understand why she's making them and why she can't see obvious fallacies in her own logic. A lot of my channel is dedicated to the ability to identify women who have untreated childhood trauma so that we can avoid these women in our personal lives. It's not our job to save them, it's their job to get treatment. People who are untreated victims of child abuse will ruin your life. I bring this up because one of the easiest ways to identify a woman who has been abused and not gotten treatment is her voice. This is something that I picked up from listening to about a decade of a radio show called Loveline. When women are abused severely or had a traumatic event as children, their vocal development will stop at the age of the initial abuse. So if a girl gets molested at 7 years old, she will sound like a 7-year-old into adulthood. Now I stress that this does not happen to every woman who has been abused, but when it does happen, it's almost a guarantee that some pretty bad abuse went on during childhood. In this video, Rachel is 25, but she sounds like she's 6. I'll give you an example.
Hey everyone, today we are going to be making a video. I'm going to be making a video. You guys aren't making a video, you're just watching the video.
Now obviously, you can see her face, so you know it's an adult, but listen to this very first part again without video.
Hey everyone, today we are going to be...
Does that voice sound like it's coming from a 25-year-old? No, it doesn't. Her voice does lower a little bit during the video, but it's still too high for a 25-year-old. Anytime I hear this voice, I think abuse victim. And as I was watching her other videos, it didn't take me that much effort to prove my theory.
There's that, as well as having issues with depression and anxiety for the last, I don't know how many years, 10, 12, 14 years, whatever. For the entirety of my adult life at least. And I've also had issues with herpes.
Okay, the self-mutilation and a decade worth of anxiety and depression is pretty severe. She must have had it really bad as a kid, which, as I always say, is not the victim's fault. However, it is her responsibility to fix herself as an adult. And it doesn't excuse her for giving awful psychological advice as an influencer because she has not yet gotten effective treatment for her trauma. There are plenty of outlets out there for therapy, even if you don't have money. For those of you who are curious about that, check out Healthy Gamer GG. The owner of that channel, Dr. K, is doing some pretty amazing stuff. One thing that does happen in women's case is that when they get treatment, their voice deepens, and eventually they end up sounding like an adult. That's probably because the treatment removes their chronic anxiety, and being more relaxed lowers your voice. Just so you get the idea, here are 2 more examples of the baby voice. First is false accuser Monica Rial.
When you speak, your voice resonates in your head. So what I hear in my head sounds more like a calling human. And I know that what you hear sounds like a 5-year-old, and that's fine.
Speaking of false accusers, Christine Blasey Ford also has a baby voice.
I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school.
Look into their histories. They sound like that for a reason. I say all of this because child abuse negatively affects the way you think. What you learn early on has a massive effect on how you behave as an adult. One thing that is consistent about abusive parents is that they do not like to be criticized. They also don't like to be questioned, and doing either of those things will get you a beating. So, if you learn for the first 18 years of your life that criticizing people and asking questions is bad, then you aren't going to actively practice those things. More importantly, you also aren't going to practice those things on yourself. That's a problem because people by nature are walking contradictions, and unless you sit there and constantly attack and refine your beliefs, you will make a ton of obvious mistakes. Here's an example of such a mistake.
As human beings, we're all controlled by our emotions. It's the first kind of like driving force in a lot of our decisions. Even in men, and even if there are gender differences, like there are still outliers, there are still people who fall at different parts of the spectrum. Not every woman is only controlled by her heart, and not every man is only controlled by logic. It's a big spectrum, all people are different. You can't make these big sweeping like generalizations and use it as a bad thing. As human beings, we're all controlled by our emotions. We're all controlled by our emotions. You can't make these big sweeping like generalizations.
So she makes a sweeping generalization about all people, then immediately after says that generalizations are wrong. I thought you were for science. It says so on your Twitter. Science is entirely about generalizations and finding predictable patterns. If I make a theory about gravity and it only works in Nashville, Tennessee, then my theory on gravity sucks. If I am an auto mechanic and I hear a certain problem noise that is likely to be in the engine, should I check the entire car? Do I waste hours of my time working on nonsense? Or do I go where the problem is most likely to be based on past information? no general patterns means no science. This is one of the most anti-science arguments that feminists like Rachel make, particularly when they're losing an argument. It's also a trick that women in general frequently use when they're losing an argument. Using outliers to imply that women think just as logically as men is not scientific. Now, there are many more contradictions and bad arguments than that one in this video, but before that, let's hear a word from this video's sponsor, Sandman.
Zuck the Puck drinks water like a duck, but he also drinks your data. So tell him and Google to shove your data up their schwing-schwangs by downloading the Brave browser. It's free, blocks online advertising, and protects your privacy and data from evil tech companies. You only see ads if you want to see them, and you get cryptocurrency for your attention. Don't let Zuck use you to make a buck. Download Brave by clicking on the link down below.
Alright, so I'm not going to go over all of the bad arguments, because if I did, then this video would be over an hour long. So I'm only going to do 2 more, and if you want to see the remaining 8 or so that I counted, then you can just watch the original video. For this next one, let's get back to Rachel's original statement about sexual promiscuity.
Like, how does it affect anyone else? How many people a woman sleeps with? Adults should be allowed to do what they want, as long as they take responsibility for their own actions afterwards. If a woman wants to go around sleeping with 1,000 chads, that's absolutely fine, as long as she practices safe sex, and if she does get pregnant, she acts responsibly about it, and you know, she gets regular tests and uses condoms and whatever, and doesn't mess with anyone's feelings. I don't see why it's an issue.
This is why you don't take advice from untreated abuse victims. What she essentially is recommending is sex addiction. In fact, she even almost recommends alcoholism in this video.
How does it affect anyone else? How many people a woman sleeps with, or how much alcohol she drinks, unless, you know, it's affecting her family and friends. And
let's break down why it's a bad idea to have dozens or hundreds of different sexual partners. There is no such thing as safe sex. All you can do is reduce risk. There is no contraceptive that will keep you perfectly safe, even if it's used properly. For example, if a woman has herpes or HPV on the outside of her vagina, you can still get it with the condom on, as long as her exposed skin touches your exposed skin. Speaking of affecting other people, and speaking of affecting women, certain strains of HPV cause cervical cancer. Even if you got the Gardasil shot, it does not protect you against all types of HPV. Not to mention, a lot of women don't even know they have HPV because it's inside of their vagina and they can't see it. Keep in mind that your only protection against these diseases is a condom. If that breaks with your random weekly fling, then you get to roll the dice and hope you didn't catch anything.
STDs are easily preventable. We just need good sex education to teach people how to be safe and to get tested often and so on.
But that's all fine, because she can just get tested, right? Well, STD tests are expensive. Do you think that a career woman who works at Starbucks can afford to be tested the multiple times a month that would be required to remain safe? Of course she can't. Maybe Rachel hopes that Planned Parenthood will subsidize everything. And if you think that women don't lie about having STDs and practice safe sex perfectly, then you are out of your mind. This is all predicated on women being perfectly responsible. That is a fantasy. That is not how real people behave. For those of you who don't know, it's actually quite difficult to get a girl pregnant. Though theoretically it's possible to get her pregnant on the first shot, and you should always treat it like that, the reality is that you only have about a 3-day window every month based on how long the egg lasts after it drops and based on how long the sperm can survive in the vagina. Typically, if a woman gets pregnant, it means she has been having tons of unprotected sex. It also means that she has failed to be responsible in multiple ways. 1, for not using a condom. 2, for not using birth control. You know, birth control which is over 99% effective when used properly. And 3, for not taking emergency contraceptives when a condom breaks. There are a ton of ways to prevent pregnancy, and it is almost impossible to get pregnant if you are being responsible. Plus, there's always adoption. So why are there so many single mothers? It's because women aren't being responsible. Rachel is speaking in fantasy, not reality.
How many women do you know that can make sound decisions regarding finances? Few of them have the self-discipline to save money. Well, me for one, my sister for another, all of my female friends for like 5 more. I don't have that many female friends, but the ones I do, they're irresponsible.
You knowing an outlier does not mean that outlier describes the general trend. Based on anecdote, of course, there are women out there who are financially responsible. I've heard some of them call into the Dave Ramsey show. But is that true of the population at large? No. There are far more financially responsible men than women. Take it from feminists. They are always saying that men have all the money. Why do you think the world works that way? Could it possibly have to do with competence, responsibility, or discipline? Nah, I guess they were all just lucky, or they stole the money from women. Everyone who's rich doesn't deserve it, because if I believed that people were rich because of competence, then that would make me feel really bad about myself. By the way, guys, that's really what the wage gap argument is about, an inferiority complex. But we don't even have to talk about that kind of stuff, because I can prove that Rachel is not financially responsible, which kills her anecdotal example of women being responsible.
To everyone who helped donate to X-Cult Babies fundraiser, which has honestly, like, saved my life. I know a lot of people kind of look at me and think, oh, well, she has a decent number of subs, she lives in a nice flat, she must be doing well for herself. But the last few months have been difficult, both emotionally and economically. And without you guys, I wouldn't have enough last month's rent.
This video was filmed only 9 months after her video on MGTOW. 9 months after saying that she is financially responsible, she ends up broke and has to petition her followers to bail her out. Not saying that you can't ask your fans for help, but don't call yourself financially responsible and then cry about not being able to afford rent less than a year later. There's one last topic I wanted to cover, because I always give the people I make videos about a chance to defend themselves. For example, there was a video that I was going to make smearing Carol Baskins for murdering her husband and then running the same scam as Joe Exotic. However, I listened to Carol's defense and then dumped several days of work because I believe that she disproved the allegations against her. So in Rachel's defense, I don't disagree with her on everything. In fact, I commend her a little because out of all the women I've seen make videos criticizing MGTOW, she is the only one who has actually pronounced the acronym correctly, meaning she at least did a little research. I liked her review of Shallon Lester's awful book. I agree with Rachel's views on not hitting kids. And finally, I also thought she brought up a semi-fair point on MGTOW. This is something that I've been using this channel to fight against.
It's not hate we feel, it's contempt. Contempt is a very different emotion. Yeah, and it's so much better, isn't it? We look down on you, you disgust us, we don't respect you enough to even hate you. Hate should be reserved for people on your level, your peers, not for malfunctioning helpmates.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this kind of stuff doesn't exist. We know this exists. A part of the mission statement of this channel is to end this type of behavior. Now, anger is a part of the process of healing, but this is not a healthy person speaking. Contempt is what you have for someone when you want to enact violence on them. Contempt is how racial violence starts. Contempt is what the Columbine killers had before they shut up a school. Contempt is what Elliot Rodger had when he talked about how people were below him to justify his killings. And even Shallon Lester uses contempt on shop owners to justify stealing from them in her book.
I'd never hated any grocery store chain more than this one. It was a ratty, literally rodents everywhere. Overpriced cesspool, always full of the rudest employees available. One cashier called me a white bitch when I tried to return a carton of rotten milk. Plus, I was a staunch vegetarian. I considered stealing meat a little FU to both the grimy store and the vile meat industry.
Contempt is not self-actualizing or healing. All it does is make you look like a psychopath. Hatred and contempt are not going to fix the problem. That's not how this game is played. If you want to stop the problem, then you have to make evil people look bad. The only power they have is other people's support for their cause. It's the same case with women. Evil women cannot survive without sin. If you take away all their supporters, then the evil will vanish. They get this support by looking like heroes. Think about how radical leftists describe themselves. We are the good guys. We are the party of morality. If you disagree, it's because you're a bad person. They have to say that, or people won't support terrorist groups like Antifa. You make them look like the bad guys, and people won't follow them. How do you make them look bad? Live an amazing life. Make all the right financial decisions. Exercise. Eat right. Donate to charity. Help out your family and community. And be a happy person that other people want to be. The better you look, the uglier that they look. You can also make yourself difficult to hate. You know what makes you easy to hate? Posting messages online saying repeal the 19th, talking about how much contempt you have for women. You know what also makes you easy to hate? Being an asshole anytime a woman comments on a MGTOW video. Certainly you can make jokes when you're on home field, and I welcome humor on this channel, but when you're playing with the opposition, you need to be as polite as possible. When they can't defeat your well thought out arguments, they will get pissed and start lashing out, which will make them look bad. Abusers don't like to be proven wrong, so arguments will always end this way. That's how you win. You show people that they are the abusers. Last, I have said before that when I make videos about other YouTubers, do not harass them. Do not leave nasty comments on their videos. Do not mass dislike or mass flag their videos. Do not message their advertisers. When you do that, they can get power by claiming victim status like Anita Sarkeesian did a few years ago. Do you remember how Anita finally disappeared? People found out that she was an awful person and a fraud, so they refused to work with her or donate her money. Now nobody cares about her. Let that happen. Don't spit venom. Instead, be nice. Kill them with kindness. But with that said, I think that will be enough for this video. So if you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, comment and share. If you would like to support this channel, then you can do so with PayPal, Patreon, or Subscribestar. All of those links can be found on my channel page or in...
And I watched you lie, and then
I didn't punch you, by the way. I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
You know, even a lot of guys have been around a long time. I know.
No, when you fucking have a closed fist.
You get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not deck you. I was hitting you. I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this?
How are your toes?
I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
that's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start physical fights?
Baby!
Because you start physical fights?
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did, so I had to get the out of there.
I was exposed to abuse at a very young age. I knew certain things early on without ever having been told. I knew that men had the power, physically, socially, and financially, and that a lot of institutions support that arrangement. I knew this long before I had the words to articulate it, and I bet you learned it young too. This is a quote from Amber Heard, written by her in a Washington Post article from December 2018, 2 years after she accused Johnny Depp of domestic violence. All it takes is a little patience and all the facts will come out, and as you can see, the facts are in. This accusation led to a divorce that lost Johnny Depp $7 million, and the article lost him his role as Jack Sparrow on Pirates of the Caribbean, which is the role that made him a superstar. That being said, I wonder if Amber Heard is going to lose any of her jobs now because we found out that she was the abuser. But I thought that women can't be violent. Men are bigger than women, they are stronger than women, so they're the only ones who can be the abusers in a relationship. In situations like this, what Me Too has done is further the already high amount of confirmation bias that was present on the radical left. All women must be believed. Anyone with half a brain can see that statement is idiotic. People just assuming that victims are victims instead of critically looking at the information provided is stupid. Intelligent people make assumptions sparingly and only with strong evidence to support that assumption. Usually, it's better to go on the straight facts. For example, police found no evidence of abuse on the part of Johnny Depp when they investigated the initial claims. That immediately should have acquitted him when he was accused, but the confirmation bias and the crazy leftist mobs won't allow that. Amber goes on to say in the article, "Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out." Well, she got that wrong. I think she means she became a public figure known for domestic abuse.
But you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you. I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
That's the difference
you
between
poor
me and
girl.
you. You're a fucking baby.
If some of you have ever had abusive parents or have had an abusive girlfriend, you may recognize this line. I didn't hit you that hard. Stop being such a baby. You are over-exaggerating. This sentiment reminds me of a Stefan Molyneux call I have linked in the description. During the call, a father says he just tapped his young daughter on the back of the head for doing her math homework improperly. Well, it turns out that she ended up smashing her face into the table and breaking her lip open. Maybe this guy should use the Amber Heard strategy and tell his little girl that she should stop being a baby because he didn't hit her that hard.
I'm not the one who throws pots and
That's,
else at me.
that's different. That's one does not negate the other. That's irrelevant. It's a complete non sequitur. Just because I've thrown pots and pans does not mean that you come and knock on the door. Just because they're evasive does not mean that you come and knock on the door.
Really, I should just let you throw.
I'm not saying that. You're saying that. You're putting words in my mouth.
The only time I ever threw anything at you was when you
Are you?
threw the cans at me in Australia.
Why are you trying to justify who throws things based on
Because
whether or
that-
not you come knocking on the door? I don't
Because
get
that
why
is a irrational and violent maneuver.
How
So
does
a
one
man would
inform
want
the
to
other?
get out of that area so that he doesn't get so f***ing angry that he actually does pop the wife.
I quote, she repeatedly and frequently threw objects into my body and head, including heavy bottles, soda cans, burning candles, television remote controls, and paint thinner cans, which severely injured me. End quote. I know most women these days can't cook, so they can't sympathize with how much a frying pan weighs, but I assure you that quality cookware weighs enough to break facial bones, knock someone out, or with a few good hits, you can kill someone. Amber should be in jail for what she did. Going off the hard evidence here, we have multiple examples of Amber abusing Johnny, but the only thing we have on him is that he retaliated once in self-defense. Outside of that, he seems to have a good strategy of leaving the room when she becomes abusive, because the reality is that if he retaliates in any significant way, he goes to jail, even if she started it. However, I can't help but say that if something goes this wrong, then there are problems on both sides. During the research, I found this article from comedian Doug Stanhope that was written right after the initial accusation. In the article, Stanhope claims that he knew all of this was going on way before the accusation. He writes, "We watched it build like this since before they were married. We watched her manipulate and fuck with him for years. We didn't say a word. To each other, yes, but never to him. We didn't say shit because he's Johnny Depp and we didn't want to be thrown out of the circle for saying that the Emperor was stripped of his clothes. The problem is that Johnny Depp is really bad at picking his inner circle. Outside of the bad choice to marry Amber Heard, Doug Stanhope is not really a friend. This is someone who is using Johnny Depp for his fame. Certainly it's honorable to write an article and stand out against the crowd by saying Johnny Depp is not guilty, but if you were his real friend, you would have stood up to him and warned him about his bad decision before this all happened. If you're someone's friend or you're close to that person, then it's your obligation to warn them away from doing things that are completely stupid. They may not take your advice and they may fight you on it, but if you aren't willing to try and save your friend from this horribly abusive relationship because you're afraid of losing access to the cool crowd, then you're not a real friend. Now let's make things clear, because I'm tired of this asinine message that women are only compassionate and can never do evil. But first, let me tell you about this video's sponsor, Redux Movement. Redux Movement is an online fitness resource dedicated to helping you get better health out of your body by teaching you good alignment and good exercise technique. You can check out the HIIT Mobility course at reduxmovement.com. It's the first link in the description. Back to the topic. So, isn't it just annoying when you hear people say things like, if society were run by women, then there would be world peace by 2030 because women are just so peaceful and loving and caring? Of course, there are plenty of channels out there who have made videos on women doing abusive things, but I think there is a real shortage in the market of people talking about women of power who have done some really awful stuff. It's time to fix that because women, including female leaders, are capable of doing some really horrendous stuff. Speaking of, let's start with Elizabeth Bathory. Born to one of the most prominent families in Central Europe in 1560, Bathory was labeled as the most prolific female murderer by Guinness World Records. The highest number reported was 650 murders, and she had 306 witnesses and survivors to verify her actions. But killing the victims was not enough for her. She also tortured them quite severely before she killed them. Most of her victims, if not all, were children, young servant girls from the ages of 10 and 14. These murders got a lot more pronounced as Elizabeth got older, and my guess is that as a formerly attractive woman, she was jealous of these young girls' youth. The most commonly reported ways that she tortured these children was by beating them, burning or mutilating their hands, biting the flesh off their faces, arms, and other body parts, stabbing them with needles, freezing them to death, and starving them to death. What she did to justify this initially was to basically wait until one of the servants made the slightest mistake, like stitching something improperly, and then, as punishment, she would stab them with a needle. After that, the rest is history. And she got away with it for a very long time because her family was powerful.
Any questions that were raised by family members were squelched quickly by virtue of the huge power that the Bathory family had. Elizabeth was, in practical terms, untouchable. She could torture and kill to her heart's delight.
As far as she goes, though, after her husband died, she basically ran her estate into the ground and had to open up a school for noble children when the debt started piling up. Like a bad criminal, she decided to start torturing and killing the noble girls. Noble parents, unlike the peasant parents who sold their kids into servitude for money, the noble parents noticed that their kids were gone, and she got caught. However, she never admitted to murdering or torturing the kids, despite all the evidence, and blamed everything on her servants who helped her. There are many women who are just like Elizabeth Bathory. The next example is Queen Mary I, also known as Bloody Mary. She took the throne at age 37 and a year later proceeded to burn 300 Protestants alive. Let me say that just one more time. She lit people on fire and let them burn until they died because they were the wrong religion. But she sounds like she has a lot of compassion and kindness in her heart. How about Wu Zetian, China's first and only female empress? She allegedly poisoned her oldest son, forced her second son to kill himself, and murdered quite a handful of her political opponents, all while pretending to be a perfect angel in public. Our final example is Indira Gandhi, another one and only like Wu Zetian. She was the first and only female Prime Minister of India, ruling from 1966 to 1977, and then after saying she didn't want to go back as Prime Minister in 1978...
Mrs. Gandhi, can you imagine any circumstances in which you might once again become Prime Minister of India?
I can certainly imagine the circumstances, but the question is whether I want to be or whether I'll agree to be or not.
What would be the terms under which you would agree to be?
No, it's not a question of terms. I don't want to be.
She went back into politics as Prime Minister in 1980 until she was assassinated by one of her Sikh bodyguards in 1984. Like every communist, socialist, she campaigned with a slogan that roughly translates to abolish poverty. Now, I don't know how many times this has to be said, so maybe it should be phrased differently, but poverty is not about how much money you make. There are people who make a lot of money who are broke, and there are people who don't make very much money at all who are also broke. Poverty is a mindset, not a pay stub. If you spend more money than you make, then you will be poor. If you discipline yourself and live below your means, then you can develop wealth and possibly become rich. Throwing more money at the solution doesn't solve the problem because it just makes the debt bigger. Instead of having $25,000 in a car loan, you now have $100,000 in a car loan. Trying to solve poverty by giving people money who have a history of spending more money than they make is idiotic. But what it does do is allow you to grow government power, and that's exactly what Indira Gandhi did. She, in fact, was well known for monopolizing power in the hands of the government. For example, she nationalized 14 of the largest banks in India in 1969, which was a great way for the government to start taking control over all of the money.
Would you say the purpose of pre-censorship, this is government regulations, is to guarantee certain safeties for the state. The chief censor must see everything that's published, and speeches of members of parliament must not be published in any manner or form only speeches of ministers. I mean, was that necessary to defend India from
For
collapse?
a short period, yes, because as I said, the situation was more or less going out of control, and it was necessary. There is which developing country has been able to go ahead. Only India has tried this experiment of having social and economic changes through peaceful and democratic means. Now, when these means were threatened, we took a temporary measure. It was I who revoked, I declared the emergency, but also I who revoked it.
So, Indira's claim to infamy was an 18-month declared state of emergency. During this year and a half, she imprisoned a metric shitload of her political opponents, censored the press, and forced mass sterilization. She was forced out of her role as prime minister upon being...
Guys, do you see this one right here where my mouse is? What the f is this? Dad disciplines daughter's best friend. Must see. Well, I guess we have to check it out. I guess we've been left with no options. Oh, I guess. I really don't want to watch it, but I guess. Oh.
I'm loving your new accent.
I'm just having fun. Honestly, I'm so glad that you joined our sorority, Emily. I'm so glad you let me join.
Oh, they're in college? They're in college. They're grown. Why are they getting beat